Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, boni miliwanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jed Lee, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored that you would join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show, and please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Cheryl Johnson. She is here to celebrate some wisdom about the business of books. Before I invite Cheryl into the studio to share the wisdom that she has gained being a very successful traditionally and self-published author, we want to invite you to connect with us on social media. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, at Jedley Magic on Twitter. Please be sure to check out our Reading With Your Kids channel on YouTube, and also check out our great brand new Drawing With Your Kids channel on YouTube as well. And of course, you can visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. If you're an author, you can click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page to find out how we can help you celebrate your book with the world. If you're a parent, you can click on the Parents Click Here button to read our blog and also find out how you can bring the Reading With Your Kids podcast to your community. And there's a contact button at the top of the page that you can use to send us a message. Let us know what we're doing well, let us know what we could be doing better, and let us know who you would like to hear on a future episode of the Reading With Your Kids podcast. Join us right now from the southern part of the great state of Texas. Our guest is returning today to share some of her book publishing and marketing wisdom that she has earned through many years of hard work. Please welcome back to the show, Cheryl Johnson. Hey, Cheryl, how are you?
Hey, Jed. Thank you for having me back. I'm great. Thank you.
I'm excited to have you back on. One of the things there's so many things about this podcast that I love. And if I were to tell you that I sat down and had a master plan when I launched the show, and, a master plan that we would feature, a rainbow of authors from all over the world representing every ethnicity and viewpoint and lifestyle, I would have been lying. But it's just happened. And one of the other things that we've been able to do is to share some great wisdom with authors about, and aspiring authors about how they can take their idea for a great children's book and turn it into a book, and hopefully turn it into something that they can profit from, or at least not lose money publishing. And you have a lot of experience. First, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
So I own an advertising agency. I've been doing marketing for about 30 years and opened my own advertising agency about 25 years ago. And in the capacity of my business, I work with particularly small business owners, on a daily basis, helping them to develop marketing plans. And one of the things that I have found so interesting as I've started through this journey of publishing books, and for reference, I've published 7 children's books and about 40 low-content journals. So I've been on this journey on my own. But one of the things I've noticed is that a lot of authors do not approach their publishing journey as a business. And I get that. It's something we're very passionate about. We write because we're passionate about a subject and passionate about writing, and it's very personal. And that's important because that enthusiasm will translate into a better product, I think. But where I see a lot of authors missing the mark is they don't approach it as a business, mm-hmm. which it is. First and foremost, it's a business. Mm-hmm. And when I started this journey, one of the things I asked myself was, how much money am I willing to lose? And I know that sounds really negative. But that's the reality of this, because not all books that are going to be published are going to be profitable or successful. In all the books that I've published, I've had a couple where I think, okay, I've hit it out of the ballpark with this and I don't sell anything. And then I've had books where I've just kind of thrown together on a lark and they end up blowing the doors off. And so it's such a crapshoot. You just don't know which ones are going to sell and which ones aren't. And so you need to ask yourself, you need to set a budget, which is basic marketing strategy. How much, again, are you willing to lose? Now, the potential there, certainly you want to make back your money and more, but you need to set that budget so you don't end up spending, $5,000 or $10,000 when you consider an illustrator and layout and copies of books and that sort of thing, and end up selling 5 books. So you need to have that marketing plan in place to move forward. So what I've had people approach me as I've been publishing now for a couple of years, and the key question they ask me is, how do you get into this? And so the first question they need to ask is, what's your strategy? Are you going to traditionally publish? Are you going to get an agent and go the traditional publishing route, or are you going to self-publish? And I will tell you, I think that we have never lived in a time that has been greater for creative people, because time was you couldn't publish a book unless you had a publishing contract. And now through Amazon and Ingram Spark and Lulu and other avenues, you can self-publish a book very inexpensively and reach people and become tremendously successful. And so it's a tremendous opportunity for creative people to get out there and not have their hands tied by an industry, because you can create your own route.
Yeah. And that's really, really special. That we have this in that, and that we're alive at this time in history. It's really incredibly amazing.
It is amazing. It is absolutely amazing. So I think like many publishers have both done traditional publishing and then self-publishing. I was very fortunate early on to have a publisher pick up for my titles and move forward with it. So I've got a little bit of a experience in that route, and then also the self-publishing route. And so but traditional publishing is tough, because it does take a lot of legwork. You need to investigate which publishing houses are accepting author submissions. There's 2 routes you can go. You can publish like I did and send your books directly to a publisher, but not all publishing houses accept works directly from authors. Most of them accept submissions only through agents. And so then you've got to research which agents are accepting new clients, which agents are accepting manuscripts in your genre, because a lot of agents specialize in specific genres. And then you need to investigate which publishing houses or agents will accept manuscripts with or without illustrations. And so there's a lot of questions you need to ask yourself before you even start down this journey to determine what your expenses are going to be. So if you decide to go a traditional route and you find an agent that accepts your manuscript, and they find a publishing house that wants manuscripts without illustrations, you do not want to invest $4,000 to $5,000 in an illustrator, because chances are they'll change it. So you really need to have a game plan before you move forward on this. The second option is, if you decide to self-publish, then you're going to have to write your manuscript, get an editor to go through your text, and then hire that illustrator to put your books together. But
and can I just put an underline under something?
Yeah.
You said you need to write your manuscript, get it edited, find an illustrator. I want to underline that, get it edited. And when we're talking about being edited, we're not talking about asking our spouse, our partners, to go through and find typos. We're not asking our elementary school teacher to see if the grammar is correct. An editor really takes a look at a manuscript and helps you polish it and make it the best it can be. Not just finding typos, not just fixing grammar, but actually helping you shape that book so that it's that it's marketable and has a better chance to be successful.
Absolutely. And, when you have friends and family go through your book, which is great. I mean, I recommend that because it's important to have people look at your book because you're just too close to it. You're not going to see things that are obvious issues because you work with this stuff for too long and you just, having done design for many, many years, you just can't see things that are staring in front of your face. So it's good to have other eyes look at it. But what happens a lot of times is people that you're friends with or family may be afraid that they're going to hurt your feelings if you say this isn't working. So you really need a non-emotionally involved person and set of eyes to look at this stuff and give you honest feedback. There's also some, they call them bots, where you've got people who you can pay very minimal amount of money to read your book and give you feedback, which is great too. But to spend that time on the front end to make sure that you have a really tight manuscript can help you through the whole process dramatically when you're submitting to publishing houses, when you're submitting to agents and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So the second route, self-publishing, which is what I've done mostly, is my biggest. I see. I'm on a Facebook group for children's books, authors and illustrators, and I see so many authors buying product in bulk. They're going overseas and they're buying it, which I don't begrudge them. I mean, it's hard to get competitively priced product locally. But what I really want to say to them is, before you order all those books, develop a marketing plan before you start spending all that money. And ask yourself the question, how are you going to get it in the hands of customers? Because I think so many of them don't do that. They don't realize that writing the book and getting them in your hands is almost the easy part. Getting them in customers' hands and getting them to customers to buy them is really, really challenging. So develop a budget. Again, for the illustrator, editors, formatters, trade show expenses, travel expenses, and test market your book before you start printing. So my children's books are nature-based and they're aimed at elementary school children. So I like to take them and give them to teachers and read them and say, what do you think? Are kids going to respond to this? Am I writing something that is going to be reaching them at their level? So test market your book, and make sure that your product is reaching the age group and the audience that you want it to. And so now that you've test marketed, you formatted, you think it's perfect, what do? You're going to print on demand, or you're going to go offshore printing. So those are two different options. Print on demand, for people that don't know, is printing organizations that will print as few as one copy. So they will print them as you sell them, or they'll print low quantities. And Amazon KDP is a great option for print on demand. And it's also great for soft copies. They do hardcovers, but there's some limitations, and particularly for children's books, it's not really an option because of the page count generally. If you're doing, like Harry Potter, for lack of a better word, if you're doing something with some substance, you can certainly do hardcovers, but for, an illustrated book, typically it's going to be 40 to 50 pages, and Amazon just can't do that. So Ingram, Spark, and Lulu are great options for hardcovers on that. The other thing, and I've seen this a lot lately, is authors will get their books illustrated and they'll lay them out and they'll get them ready to go without taking the step of seeing what the print requirements are for these different companies. So they'll get their book laid out in something that is maybe 8x10 opening on the short end, only to discover that that's not a print option for Amazon. So take the time to look at these different print-on-demand houses to see what their print requirements are, so you have it laid out and illustrated to the right size beforehand. Now, it's, again, certainly more expensive to do overseas, or less expensive to print these books overseas, But the print on demand, you don't have a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gives you the opportunity to see if there's interest in your product and to see if you can sell it.
Right.
So, what I've done with my books is I've not done any of them overseas. I do markets. I sell on Amazon. I sell in my store, and I just order them as I need them. Granted, I'm not needing as many of them, my profit margin isn't as great,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't have as much money wrapped into them either.
Right.
And so it's just an easier investment.
We have one guest that's been on the show who uses the overseas publishing option, and he is waiting on an order of 20,000 books, but they're already sold. He goes out and he markets the schools, and he gets schools and school districts to buy a bulk quantity, and then he gets it published. We've had other authors on who've gone out and have ordered 10,000 books from China. They haven't sold anything. They haven't talked to a school. The first author, the books are going to come. They're not going to go. He's not going to touch them. Going to go right to the schools that have ordered the books. Whereas opposed, the other authors are going to get a shipment of books. They're going to sit in a basement or a garage, and then they're going to start worrying about how to sell them. And that's the wrong time to worry.
No, you're absolutely right. They're putting the cart before the horse. And that's why I keep saying, do print on demand. See if you can generate some business. And if you find that you are developing a market for your book and you do see, yes, realistically, I can sell 5,000 copies, or I think the minimum overseas where it makes sense is about 2,000. Mm-hmm. If I have my numbers right. So if you can generate enough business for 2,000 copies, absolutely do it overseas, but don't put the cart before the horse. Now, the other thing is overseas printing will overall give you better quality. Not that you can't have a good quality book in the United States printed. You can, but the cost is so prohibitive that you just can't get your money back. And so overseas, you can have a lower cost per item and a better quality book. But you're also going to have long lead times also, because they ship them by ocean freight. Mm-hmm. So I know for my business, when we have something shipped via ocean, it's about 20 to 30 days. So you have to figure that also when you're over and overseas. So can we take a minute and talk about the math?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking about numbers, and I think that's really, it really is important. And, when we started this and we're talking about, I work with small businesses in your marketing firm, and I'm sure that there are some people who clicked off and they're not listening right now because they're like, a small business, that's Tony's pizza shop. That's, my mechanic. Well, yeah, those are small businesses, but you as an author of a self-published children's book, that's your small business. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And it really is all about the numbers. Mm-hmm. And I know creative people typically don't like to talk about numbers, but we're running a business. And so we need to talk about numbers because they are very, very important. So let's do some math. I'm going to use myself as an example.
Okay.
So my hardcover books sell for $19.99 each. Okay. And I order them from Ingram Spark. If I buy 20 copies, I have to invest about $230. So my cost per book is about $8.36. So $8.35. So how many books do I have to sell to break even? Okay. That's the question you need to be asking yourself every time you're looking at spending money. How much product do I have to sell to break even? And the answer is 12. I have to sell 12 copies of my book to break even. Is that a reasonable number? Can I sell 12 copies? Yeah, pretty much in my sleep. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I can sell 12 copies. I can break even. So 8 copies is going to be nothing but profit. All right. So if I order hardback copies overseas, if I buy 500 copies, I have to invest $2,000. So the copies are about $4 each. I'm making a heck of a lot more per book. Okay. But I have to buy 500 copies to get there. So how many copies do I have to sell to break even? 100. Can I sell 100 copies? I don't know. So I do markets pretty aggressively. I don't do them during the summer because it's just too hot here. But I do them very aggressively from about January through May, and then in September through the end of the year. Mm-hmm. And I'm doing 2 to 4 markets a month. Can I sell 100 hard copies of one of my titles? No, I can't. I mean, I've got 6 titles. I'm selling lots of product. Don't misunderstand. But it might take me a year to sell 100 copies just to break even. Mm-hmm. And I'm out there aggressively selling. Mm-hmm. So it comes back to a marketing plan. If I were to get out and aggressively sell to the schools, maybe I could sell 100 copies a lot faster. But it comes back to what's your marketing plan? How are you going to be selling them? How are you going to get it into people's hands? So do you want that $2,000 wrapped up for a year? Is there other things you can be doing with that money? So here's some more math to consider. I also sell paperbacks. I do all my books all of my books are in paperback. I don't do all of them in hardback. And again, It comes down to me for having duplication in inventory. So all of my books are in paperback. I sell them for $14.99, and I get them from Amazon KDP, print on demand. So if I order 20 copies, I have to invest $80, or the hard softbacks are about $4 each. I only have to sell 6 copies to break even. Mm-hmm. And so this is a really interesting question. I posted on a Facebook group one day because I find that children's books authors, for some reason, are under the perception that they have to buy hardcover books. They're all about the hardcover books. And I get it. They look nicer. They've got more bulk. There's more, weight to them. I get it. I understand why people like hardcover books. And so I'm looking at this one day and I'm thinking, okay, I have sold probably in the last year or two, 30,000 books through the publisher, through KDP, through my markets, through, these different areas that I'm selling books. And I was interested to know what the ratio was. So I pulled up all the numbers, and my publisher sells 4 paperbacks to every hardback book. On Amazon, I sell 9 paperbacks to every hardback. Mm. And when I do shows, I sell 9 paperbacks to 1 hardback. So the bottom line is you can have a successful book without investing in hardcovers and doubling your inventory. Mm-hmm. And again, the investing. So if I'm buying 12 paperback books from Amazon, I'm spending $4 each. If I'm buying 12 hardbacks from England Spark, I'm spending $230. And so it comes back to, as authors who have written multiple books, I think, have a better handle on how things move, how things are going to sell, how they're going to sell them. But for first-time authors who are dipping their toe in to this world of children's book publishing, my advice is really take a route where you don't have to invest so much money to see if there's an interest and to see if you can sell them. And then one thing that I have really noticed with me too is I'll get a book done and I'm thinking, okay, this is it. It's perfect. It's done. I'm ready to go. I publish it. I set it aside for a couple of weeks and I come back and look at it and end up rearranging things and rewriting things and tweaking things a little bit more. And so when you can't do that when you've got 1,000 books sitting in your garage. Mm-hmm. And so it just gives you more, and I sound like I'm all about print on demand, and I'm really not. I mean, I'm that author that you have that has 20,000 books sold, print on demand, absolutely not. Send it overseas. Mm-hmm. Overseas has its place, and spending, $10,000 on books has its place, but it needs to work in the full marketing plan, needs to fit into the full marketing plan that you've developed for this business. Yeah.
And that's I think the difference between being a successful author, especially self-published author, and being someone who wrote a book and has, 2,000 sitting in their basement, is that business plan. I've shared here on the podcast when I made the decision to become a performer and leave social services and become a performer, one of my mentors sat me down And he said, you're going into show business. That's two words, show and business. And business is the bigger of the two words. And if you don't take care of business, there ain't going to be a show. So for the next 6 or 7 months, I stopped taking my acting class, not altogether, but my focus became business. And I started going to the library, taking out business books, buying business journals, how to make a marketing plan, how to develop a business plan. And, meanwhile, my colleagues, my friends, my peers in the arts are like, what are you doing that for? You have to come and take a mime class. You have to do some more dancing and this and that. Well, they're still taking dance classes and mime classes, and it's a hobby for them. And I've made a living performing for over 30 years. And it's because I sat down and took the time to develop that business plan.
Absolutely. That is so important. So important. And I think the best advice that authors can take away from this podcast is what you said. This is a business. I know it's a passion project, and I know it's something that as authors we're so emotionally invested in. But that doesn't change the fact that it is a business, and we need to approach it by a business. And the second thing I would say is, as an author, you need to remember that your hands aren't tied. You have a lot of flexibility. You can do hardback, you can do paperback, you can do print on demand, you can do overseas. And don't let anyone tell you that there's only one way to get there. Mm-hmm. Because I have done, I don't know how many shows I have done. And I only have a couple of my books in hardback. Due to space limitations in my book, in my booth, I have never once had a customer say, oh, I really love this book, but I'm not going to buy it because I want a hardback. Mm-hmm. If they like the product, they're going to buy it. Yep. And they'll buy it in the format that you have. Mm-hmm. And so don't think that as an author, you're not going to be successful if you only do hardbacks. Now, are there certain places that will not sell a soft cover book? Certainly. Mm-hmm. But that's maybe 2% of your entire sales opportunities. Mm-hmm. And so untie your hands, approach it as a business, establish a budget, and develop a game plan.
Yeah. And again, if there's an author out there that's still listening to us, and I hope you are, even if you loathe the idea of doing business, and you got into this because I feel passionate about this book. I feel passionate about this story. I am passionate. I want to share this message, this story with the world. Well, if that's your mission, if that's your ministry, you have to still approach it as a business. Yeah. Because you want that message out there. It's not going to get out there unless you take these steps, take this advice, and develop a marketing plan, develop a business plan, look at it as a business, and become a business person.
Absolutely.
It's the only way.
My business, we're a small business, but I do have 5 employees. And I have never, we've been talking about, remember to look at the money for the last half hour. I've really never approached business looking at the money. And by that, I mean, I've looked at it from the perspective of how many copies do I have to sell to break even, but I've never looked at, when I approach a customer, how much money am I going to make from that customer? It's a mindset. I mean, my goal is to help customers achieve their goals, not how much money I'm going to make. And so, you need to keep the eye on the money. That's important, but you need to focus on what's the goal of what you're producing. But I had an employee who was not happy with me at the time throw at me, well, you're only in it for the money. And I took a step back and I thought, I'm really not. But then I thought, you know what? Yeah, I am. Because if I'm not focused on the money, I'm not going to be in business tomorrow. And my 5 employees are going to be unemployed. And so as, an author is a business owner. So as a business owner, absolutely you need to be focused on the money.
Yeah.
You don't need to be looking at your customers and saying how much, how I need to sell them 10 books so I can make blah, blah, blah amount of money. I mean, because people can see through that. But you need to be looking at your bottom line. Mm-hmm. as a component of your business if you want to be in business tomorrow.
Right. Right. Yeah. You owe it to your art because you want to share your art with the greatest number of people. If you are a family, if you're a mom, dad, you owe it to your partner, you owe it to your kids because you don't want to. I had an author on, and this author had mortgaged the family house to publish I don't know the number, but there's basically a boatload of books, and if he wasn't going to sell those, each and every one of those books, his family was going to lose the house. And that's somebody who did not sit down with the numbers and crunch them and see how realistic is this and what's my business plan.
And that comes right back around to where the conversation started. How much are you willing to lose? Mm-hmm. Because that's the bottom line. You can lose everything. You cannot sell one single book.
Right.
And that's the reality of our business. So you better be darn well willing to lose whatever money you invest. Mm-hmm. And oh my word, I can't fathom mortgaging my house to pursue such a big question mark of a project.
Yeah. And, one of the things that I've learned, and it was kind of a horrifying revelation, is that most books, on average, sell 250 copies. That's the bottom. When you take the number, there are thousands of books published every single month. The reality is most of those books will not sell more than 250 copies. Same thing in podcasting. For most podcasts, they have 140 downloads for their entire podcast, for the entire life of their podcast. And same with books, and probably the same with grapes. So, whatever you can think any product.
With everything. And it sounds so depressing. But, the thing, it's such a funny setup. I mean, as an author, when I wrote my first book, it really was a passion project. And it's one of these days I'll have to tell you the story about how that book came out, but it was essentially, I wrote it for a friend. Mm. And I thought, hey, I can do something with this. And I get these ideas all the time. And I'm always amazed when somebody says, hey, I like that idea too, because it just doesn't happen very often. But it's so fulfilling. Even if one person comes to you and says, man, this is the best book I've ever had. Mm-hmm. For me, I write nature books, and my first book was about backyard birds. And I get people who send me emails, grandparents particularly. I sit outside with my grandchild and we identify the birds using your book, and we love it. And it's like, you know what? That just made my day. I don't have to sell another book. I really want to sell more books. But just to get that feedback from one person is so incredibly fulfilling. Mm-hmm. It's such a great journey.
Yeah.
It truly, truly is.
It really is. Yeah. Hey, Cheryl, please tell everybody where they can go to find out more about you, maybe find out more about your business and more about your books.
Well, thank you. So, they can visit my website at CherylJohnsonAuthor.com. And if you have a question, I think in a past life I was a teacher. So if you have a question, please feel free to drop me an email. I will be happy to give you my best free advice. It's worth what you pay for it. My books are also on Amazon, and my author page is Backyard Bird Nerd. And let's see, Amazon on my website. So they can find me there. And again, I love helping people. I love sharing my experiences. So if anybody ever has a question, please shoot it and you will get my advice.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for sharing this. I hope it didn't turn anybody off to the idea of becoming a published author. What I hope it did is to ignite that passion, but ignite it in a way that is going to be successful, in a way that the most people possible can read your art, can read your story, and hear your message.
Absolutely. But one thing I've learned over the years is I've tried a lot of different things, and most of the things I've tried, I don't know anything about. Mm-hmm. And so I've failed at quite a few, but I've succeeded at quite a few, but I've loved the journey every step of the way because I pursue things that I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
And so if you're an author and you're passionate about the subject, absolutely do it and discover joy in the creation of something that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
And hopefully other people will share that passion with you, but just enjoy the ride because it is such a great journey.
Amen.
Man, it's a great journey.
Amen. We've had a really fun and eye-opening time speaking with Cheryl Johnson, and we both hope that you make your dreams come true. Hey, Cheryl,
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for being back with us.
Jed, thank you so much again for having me. I always have such a great time when I'm on your show, and always am so grateful for the opportunity. So thank you.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Sarah Chinakwe. She'll be here to celebrate You Come From Greatness. That's the next episode of the podcast. Hey, you're pretty great, and I want to thank you for being with us. I also want to thank the pretty great Cheryl Johnson. I want to thank my pretty great team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Jordan Saley, Stephanie Davila, Skylar Strauss. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the great support that she's given me, but most of all, again, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for being so great. And thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.